So we lead off in a way that I don't want to. JB doesn't want to, but unfortunately, we're sort of forced to under the circumstances of what happened on Saturday. I don't know if you've noticed on this show, but we do go and try to promote the best of the division and the region, and we also are honest about some of the less than great moments from time to time. Last year, WestCon can attest to this in Westfield State because we did talk about the fight that ensued at the end of that game. And for folks for folks on social media that think that we're sitting here trying to promote these things, no, we're doing our job. That's what we do. So on Saturday, when I was going to pan from the scoreboard to the field for the final kneel down, and by the way, clock operator, when it's 41 seconds left, maybe hold that play clock for one more second when its kneel down's going on, because we didn't need the final kneel down. You started the clock at 41 seconds. If you held it 1 second, this may not have even happened. Okay, so let's start right there. Let's move forward now to me panning over, and I had actually missed the crux of the kneel down when my video got over there. So it wasn't like I was trying to withhold something. And we appreciate Cyril Parham from Salisbury for putting the preceding couple seconds out there for people to see, because it shows two things to us. It shows a right tackle. We're not going to run these clips here, folks, because you know what? 22,000 views later, this stuff is out there, okay? And we'll talk about that in a second. But you have a right tackle kind of doing a come on, bring it move. And then you have Colin Lama from Union actually bringing it on a kneel down and swatted it away kind of like fly at the end of the day, because he had a couple of big offensive linemen that basically swatted him back. Should have been done. We should have been done at that point. Everybody shake hands. Let's go. No.
Good game.
Jack Lanham decides to play, I don't know if he was trying to do the beauty queen wave or what he was doing at that point, but it was just something for 20 seconds, or give or take, if it felt like, and maybe it was shorter, whatever it was, toward the defense, as if to say that was not a class move, Colin. And it wasn't, okay? Colin should know better. And hopefully next year he does better. And then to the bench of Union. After that, Coach Behrman comes up to Lanham, shakes his hand, pulls him in, and basically says, from what I understand, congratulations, great game, but make sure you win with class. To which Lanham looks a little shocked, because he sort of looked like he was trying to go back toward Behrman and say something to him at that point. Okay, we're done, right? That's it, right? We're done here now. Okay, everybody shake hands. No, we got two teams that are still going at each other, and the referees who, with 2 seconds left on the clock at this point, are trying to get in the middle of it and forcing the teams to separate sides of the field, or trying to at least. The clock does expire. They're still on the field. The NCAA has an issue with that, I believe, that they did remain on the field. But you know what? They were trying to do the best they could to prevent a real debacle from breaking out on that field. So, you know what, NCAA, don't ding them for that. Nobody knew what the clock had on it. They could have thrown a flag and stopped the clock and kept the game alive, and that wouldn't have been a great solution either. So, you know what? The referees tried their best there. Okay? So when we hear about a coach that's upset that the other team didn't want to shake hands with the other team, nobody had a chance to shake hands with the other team.
That's
okay?
Not truthful.
Yeah, the video was pretty clear that nobody was going to be shaking hands at that point, because there was nothing to be gained from shaking hands. Okay, teams go to their separate sides, or so we think, and then we start a dance-off in the middle of the field, heading toward the Union College team as they're going to their side. Salisbury, come on. I mean, if we really want to just break out into dance, I'll come out there and dance with you, and you'll see some really ugly dancing next time, okay? Just invite me to come out there, and I will make sure that you'll halt any future dance-offs at that point in time. Yeah, it wasn't necessary. And the moment in that video that I look at every time and I see it, Coach Behrman's son, Finn, comes running out, grabs a Union player and pushes him back. Okay, a teenage kid understood enough that this was not to be done out there. And yet I have a bunch of 18 to 22-year-olds in front of me that seemed not to be able to get it on both sides, Union and Salisbury, okay? This isn't a good look. The toughest thing for our job is to remember that we are always dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds. We always want to say, hey, look, don't they understand? Don't they get it? Yeah, I mean, they don't get it because there's still 18 to 22-year-olds every year. We get older, they don't. That's just a fact. And so what you look for is the adults in the room to stand up and do the right things. Coach Bierman, to his credit, went over to the Huddle of Salisbury and to Coach Wood, shook his hand later on, told the team, essentially, you've got a great team, keep going in the playoffs, walks away, and Union's players start glaring over at Salisbury's, and Salisbury's players say, go home. Now, somebody's trying to say, they were saying it to the parents who may have been getting on the team from the fence. I don't care who they were saying it to. It's Bush League. It's Bush League. When it gets down to it, the adults in the room didn't show up. Pat Bernardo, I will give credit to, because he actually went onto Twitter, found Will Bellamy's page. Will Bellamy had said something about the game, and Bernardo was basically saying, you guys are a bunch of gamers out there, and, great game. And it was a great back and forth. Yeah. Kudos to both of those guys for kind of dragging us out of the fray. But that's where social media's goodness for the day ended, and the rest really wasn't that good. Because we have 22,000 views of a video, and I'm being blamed for this video, basically, because God forbid I posted it instantaneously after, keep staying on it, because, again, wanted to give Salisbury something to celebrate. Yeah, exactly.
It's supposed to catch the end of the game celebration, not the something else. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, lo and behold, understand a couple things about social media. This is how actually we got close with Tevin Jones back when, because I sort of had to explain this when he was going through a downtime. It's not your friend, folks. Social media is not your friend. So to the Salisbury players and any coaches that are out there on that social media, basically trolling Union fans and Union players, and even worse, are you out of your freaking minds about what you're doing to your school's image? I have said it multiple times this weekend. Salisbury is better than that. I know them to be better than that for my 25 seasons of involvement in Division III, and you are sitting there and absolutely tooling on your reputation by doing it. You don't realize it, but you are. And anybody that has responded in that way in social media, the head coach and the coaching staff should be looking at it, pulling him into the office and saying, delete it, and enough. And I wish somebody from Salisbury and somebody from Union would put out a statement or have said it in the press conference, essentially, we don't stand for this. This was ugly. We don't stand for this. Folks, social media, when you hit retweet with comment, you're retweeting it as much as anything, like a natural retweet, even if you're tooling on what's going on in that video. 22,000 views. Normally something I post is 300 to 1,000 views if D3Football.com doesn't retweet it, and they didn't retweet this, folks. You did that. Yeah. You didn't like the video. You wanted to try to save face somehow with it, and you ended up creating a mushroom on social media. 22,000 views. That's ridiculous. We're not going to add a view on this show right now, or a bunch of views on this show to it, because we want to talk about 103 points, 111 points being scored in games.
Yeah. Yeah.
But JB, what's your final thought on this before we go to the real open here?
Just kind of seconding the, would have been nice to see some of the adults in the room step up. There were even some other things that were tweeted at us, where apparently there were quotes from a press conference after the fact. There were comments from a reporter that basically, said that a Union player took a swing at a Salisbury player. The videotape proves that didn't happen. And so, once again, not truthful. And for people to be reporting that out as fact, and there were also some attacks at, you guys only showed one side of the story. Well, we looked at both sides of the story, and I feel like we're trying to do our best job to report on both sides. And certainly both parties are a little bit at fault here to some extent or the other. But at the end of the day, this isn't the kind of stuff we want to talk about, but you just happened to catch it on film and posted it, and then, like you said, it kind of just blew up. I don't know if that makes it your fault or anybody's fault, but it happened. Let's move on, and hopefully, when Muhlenberg comes to town, we can act like we've been here before, and just have, I know I played football. I've been punched in the bottom of piles. I've had, different things said to me from across the line of scrimmage. But once the game is over, just, shake hands and head on.
Yeah. Again, we looked for the clip that Cyril actually posted before he posted it, and we were glad he did. In fact, I interacted with him. He's a great friend of ours.
Sure.
Yeah, he's a great friend of ours from
job.
Wesley. Before Salisbury, he is a class act there. I'm so glad he's landed on his feet at Salisbury, and they have gained a great guy in having him there as their SID there. Cyril, thanks for everything you do for us. Otherwise, it was a great day.
Yeah, the only other thing I would like to send home is that I really want to emphasize what you mentioned before. I mean, Pat Bernardo, who was on the show, one of the captains for the Wesley defense, that's how you're supposed to act, and he's acting like a senior leader. Hopefully the other kids on the team can learn from his example. Definitely the right thing to do, reaching out to the other team and giving them credit for being a tough opponent. I mean, Union lost, but they still put up 41 points. It wasn't like they got shut out or something. So that kind of respect is what we want to see from Division III players. And hopefully, this is the last time we ever talk about this kind of thing on the show ever again.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if Union started it, Salisbury started, or whatever. At the end of the day, you're the home team, you're the winners. You have a certain responsibility, and so does Union as the losing team and the visitor. I mean, just take a step back, folks, and do the right things. That's all we ask here, because we are in this together in Division III. It doesn't matter if you're a private school, a public school, or something in between at the end of the day. Okay, we are all Division III. And we always do the YD3 moments and whatnot. Well, here's YD3, because we don't do that crap. We don't. And we don't endorse it. We don't support it. And don't get mad when a video of it shows up. Be more embarrassed by it and move aside from it. That's what we're trying to suggest here to everybody remaining in the playoffs. We have 8 great teams in the playoffs. One missing team that we've got to talk about here. It's time to talk about football on week 13 of In the Huddle. Okay, I'm fired up. Could you tell?
Let me get down from my soapbox over here.
Well, JB, that took a few minutes there, but I think we needed to cover it. Around the nation sort of mailed it in with the Union game. Yeah, around the nation mailed it in with the Union Salisbury game. Generally, it felt like, and so I get it. They had to talk about Mount Union. They had to talk about a couple things on the other side of the bracket. We're going to talk about all those games too, and we're going to show you clips, but. We sort of had it left at our feet to have to discuss, and so there it was. Okay, now we talk about football and move on, and holy cow, football. We need to probably go almost directly into crunch time here, except, as always, I want to give you some words about the weekend of football, not the after stuff from football, but the actual football. 2 things we learned this weekend, I think, and maybe you can expound on this. We have a really tough team on the right side of the bracket from the CCIW and a team that beat them on the other side of the bracket from the CCIW. And Mary Hardin Baylor suddenly, to me, is looking like maybe not a team that's going to get back to Shenandoah, Texas at this point in time because of what's in front of them, or maybe not. We'll see. Go ahead. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me anyway, the weekend sort of played out like I expected, other than the obvious Mount Union loss to North Central. But even that wasn't a huge surprise. I felt if there was someone who could possibly do it, it was going to be the Cardinals, given their quarterback and Brock Rutter and their overall team. What an amazing game. I mean, I guess, defensive purists probably didn't enjoy it. And there were times where, I was thinking, boy, this does not look like the Mount Union defense that I'm used to seeing. But it might just be one of those, glass half full situations where the offenses were just so strong. D'Angelo Fulford went out with probably the best statistical performance of his entire career. And it's just one of those things where the team who had the ball last, or at least, when the Cardinals finally needed to make a defensive play, because there weren't a ton, because they did give up 52 points, they did at the very end, making that interception in the end zone, avoiding overtime or a possible loss if Mount Union elected to go for 2. So most of my picks, fortunately, were right. We'll talk about that later this week, Frank. But this was one where that was just a crazy game. But there were crazy games kind of across the board. So one of the more entertaining Sweet 16s or round 2s that we've had in quite some time.
If you see all these are clips, basically. We draw from box scores, basically script out our clips. This is the number of clips we're going to be running for you folks coming up in crunch time in a moment. I will read one thing off here. Let me do it impromptu. 42. Let's see. 50, 42, 54, 55, 62, 69, let's see, 81, 103, and 111. So we went between 42 points scored in the Muhlenberg game to 111 points scored in the Mount Union North Central game. That is crazy that we didn't have defenses show up to that degree on both sides of the ball, at least in any one of these games. Okay, obviously there were some lopsided games. Lopsided games we'll call it. It's at this stage you would think that defenses would be showing up. That the first round games, you got a lot of teams that are, let's say, well, do they even belong there because they won their automatic bids and the maritime effect and all that stuff. So, okay, once you get through that, you're in a round where everybody's proven themselves to be worthy of being in this thing as it is. But to see that many or that lack of defensive effort from so many teams ultimately, wow. So this is going to be interesting next 3 weeks, including the Stag Bowl, which we'll talk about some of the implications now of what it all means after crunch time. Let's go to crunch time for week 13, the second round of the playoffs of 2019. That was pathetic.
Yes, indeed.
Oh my goodness.
I was trying to remember which hand was which. I was like, this is the one. The right is this. Okay, never mind.
Yeah. JV, I love you, man. I really do. Let's go here. We're not staying in just for the sake, but we're going to go counterclockwise in the bracket, starting with the upper left in UMHB. And UMHB does win their game 48-6. Let's take a look at 3 clips here. First, here's a big play.
Throw across the middle. John L. Reed in the wide open space. Across the 50, inside the 40. It's a foot race. Inside the 20, inside the 10. And John L. Reed is gone. That is a 77-yard pitch and catch.
Big game for Reed indeed. That is at 12:52 left in the second quarter. 10 minutes later. Hey, how about Reed again?
1 of 2 wideouts to the far side. Straight drop back by Hammock. Trying it again. Looking to get the ball to John L. Reed. And Reed got it. Makes the catch.
That time for 40 yards, and 1 minute, 2 seconds later, how about
Snap
Reed
back to Hammock,
again?
Takes the handoff, straight drop back in the throw toward the corner, and the
nice
catch is made, and it is a touchdown. John L. Reed.
That made it 31-0. Thanks to John William for the commentary on that. And it is a final of 48-6 to the number 2 team in the country because we don't revote until the end, by the way. And they outgained Huntington by 523-327. Janelle Reed, 10 receptions, 253 yards, which I believe is a record for UMHB. He broke it after that third touchdown. 3 touchdowns total. Tevin Jones, 11 tackles, 2 for loss, in a fumble recovery. He's at, I think, 136 on the season now. What a tally for Tevin Jones. So there's that game. They will be facing off UMHB against the winner of Whitewater Wartburg, and Whitewater was the winner. A lot of W's going on there, 41-28, but this really wasn't a game for much of it. Let's take a look at Ronnie Ponick, 12-yard pass from Max Mailer. Made it 14-0 halfway through the first quarter. And also, let's go into the second quarter. 9:21 left there. I mean, they just poured it on by that point. 31-7 is what we had at that score, that point, in favor of Whitewater. Again, Wartburg tried to make things happen. By the way, that's Prestinek's 67-yard punt return that you saw. Wartburg tried to make it a game. Really, just too little, too late in this one. Again, it was 41-28. They outgained. Wartburg actually outgained Whitewater. I got to make sure I say this right. 382-236. Caleb Kaminsky had 2 of the 4 interceptions forced by the Warhawks defense, though. Again, it's really that defense of the Warhawks that seems to show up. Quick thoughts on the UMHB bracket right now?
Well, I don't see any reason why the Warhawks can't go down to Texas and win that game. I know that they will probably be a slight underdog, but at the same time, Huntington's not really a team that's going to be, you write too much about. 48 points is a lot. Certainly, Reed had a big game, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the Warhawks hanging in there late in this one. The Crusaders could be in trouble if they don't get things a little cleaned up. They can get away with it with teams like Huntington, but now we're hitting this Elite Eight, it's a totally different story. And for the first time in a few years, I really do feel like the Crusaders are a little susceptible.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. But ultimately, I agree with you 110% that there is no reason why they can't do it down there. Look, it's a team with experience in terms of the coaching staff that's still there in how to win games like these coming up. We'll see. Let's go to the bottom left bracket, and we'll start with Central at Wheaton. And the first quarter was pretty much all Wheaton. We're already at 14-0 when at this point it's Philip Nichols catching a 55-yard pass from Luke Anthony to make it 21-0 with 5:36 left in the first quarter. How about a story coming from this touchdown coming up here
4-down territory
right now?
Play fake, he is looking deep. Wide. He's got Burt McJunkin wide open, makes the catch at the 10. McJunkin, touchdown Thunder! Burt McJunkin, the grad transfer from Texas A&M. Hadn't played football in 7 years before he walked onto the team this year, and he makes the touchdown to put Wheaton up 27-0.
Yeah, that was just seconds later, and to hear about the Texas A&M transfer, whatever you want to call him, who didn't play for 7 years until he came back for Wheaton, McJunkin, that's a story I really never had heard before, and that's an interesting one we'll have to look at a little bit more deeply at another point in time. But then 2 minutes later, Nichols again, this time a 19-yard pass play from Luke Anthony, make it 35-0 in the first quarter. The final of this game, 49-13, Wheaton over Central. They outgained Central 474-253, 5 sacks, 2 interceptions by their defense, and Stone Watson with 100 yards rushing and a touchdown. Luke Anthony, 265 passing yards and 5 touchdowns in that game. Then, how about St. John's at Chapman, 55-26. Here's really the story of the game. We're going to show you in the clips here. First, the end of the first half, it's St. John's leading 14-6, and TJ Hodge gets a 22-yard pass from Jackson Erdman to make it 21-6 with 13 seconds left in that half. There was a response by Chapman with 4:49 left in the third quarter. As you'll see, Spencer Corona, a pass from Johnston McKinty, 29-yard pass play, makes it 28-13. But then 10 seconds later, the next play from offense for St. John's, Henry Trost, 70-yard pass from Jackson Erdman, just basically flicks out to the wing, and the blocks get him the rest of the way in the screen. It's 34-13 there, final 55-26. St. John's outgained Chapman 646-413. Erdman with 458 passing yards and 5 touchdowns, and their defense with 5 sacks and 10 tackles for loss, 3 fumble recoveries, and 8 pass breakups. St. John's, known for their offense and having trouble the previous week against Aurora defensively, really shows up with defense against Chapman.
Yeah, and the Skyhook champs certainly had themselves a strong season early on in the game. It looked like maybe players like James Kistner, their 6'5", 250 or 60-pound tight end, might help the Panthers hang in here. But eventually, for every one or two Kistners that Chapman had, St. John's just has a whole army of those guys on their sideline. It's just a different level, and it basically proved itself out over the course of the afternoon. But still, great to see Chapman hosting a game in the second round of the playoffs down there in Orange County, and so certainly a great season for them. But Johnnies are moving on, kind of like we thought.
North Central at Mount Union. Let's go there. There's no avoiding this one, and the number of clips we're about to show you here. We are at 14-7 Mount Union at the beginning of the second quarter, and 50 seconds into that quarter, it's Andrew Kaminsky, 11-yard pass play from Brock Rudder to make it 14-14. But just 45 seconds later, Justin Hill receives a 65-yard pass from D'Angelo Fulford for the touchdown. It's 21-14 at that point in favor of Mount Union. That whole back-and-forth situation continued, but at halftime, it was 38-28 in favor of Mount Union. So a two-possession lead at that point. Minute and a half into the third quarter, though, Kaminsky again, this time a 71-yard pass play from Rudder to make it 38-35 Mount Union. But again, less than a minute later, only a half minute later, it's Wayne Ruby receiving a 66-yard touchdown pass from D'Angelo Fulford to make it 45-35 Mount Union. Here's a big play, though, as they got within one score again, did North Central at this point, 45-42. 4th and 5 at the North Central 30. Mount Union goes for it, and they sack D'Angelo Fulford for a 10-yard loss. He fumbles the ball, and it's recovered by North Central at the 40-yard line. So they avert another score by Mount Union, and here's where they take advantage of it with a minute 58 left in the third quarter. Kaminsky for the third time from Rudder. It's 49-45 after that 6-yard touchdown play, their first lead of the game, I believe, at that point. We fast forward, though, and they 2 minutes later get another score, make that 3 minutes later just about, as Brock Rudder runs it in from 10 yards out, fools the defense there, makes it 56-45 North Central. This is when people finally started saying, this is really happening, isn't it? And it really was, but hey, guess who was still going to say some things about this? It was, in this case, Josh Petrocelli from D'Angelo Fulford, a 12-yard touchdown pass to make it 56-52, North Central leading. Subsequent field goal made it 59-52 North Central. But here's a big play by the Mount Union defense. 4th and 4 from the Mount Union 40. Let's see what happens.
Including Kaminsky, who's been good all day. Over the middle. High! Incomplete! The Raiders are going to get it back!
Indeed, they had a chance with 2:39 left. After that turnover on downs, here you go.
2nd and 10 at the 40. Back to pass. He's looking for something quick. Goes up top. It's high to Hill. He yanked it down. It's Ruby actually. Loose. 20. Tapped and knocked down. Wayne Ruby Jr.
A 50-yard pass play. Now notice the clock. There's over 2 minutes left in this game. We are going to fast forward in the goal-to-go situation. They lost yardage and had a penalty that pushed them back to the 17-yard line. It's 4th and goal from the 17-yard line with 7 seconds left. They ate the clock up to that degree. Here is the final play.
Goal at the 15. Fulford back. Pressure's on. He's dropping back farther and farther. Lobs it up. Picked in the end zone. The Raiders have been upset at home in the second round of the Division III playoffs.
Highland. Just unbelievable that they did it. They deserve it by all means. It's not unbelievable that, looking at the game, that there was some surprise during the game. This was just an all-out baller game by North Central, by Mount Union. Unbelievable. There were 1,412 total yards of offense in this game. D'Angelo Fulford accounted for 688 of them, with over 120 yards on the ground alone. And he basically had 4 passing touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns. Rudder had 5 touchdowns and interception. Fulford with the interception, but it was the end of the game situation. We'll talk more about this game after crunch time, but 59-52 final, North Central advances. On the bottom side of that bracket, they're going to be hosting Delaware Valley, who beat Wesley 45-10. Let's listen to some audio with the video clips on this one. We're going to start in this third quarter, actually, where we were 17-3 at this point. But first things first, Dan Allen and Daquan Bohannon had a little trickery for us.
A trick play. Daquan Bohannon goes deep. It's got Dan Allen. Touchdown, Delaware Valley. Daquan Bohannon to Dan Allen on trickeration. It's 23-3 Delaware Valley.
So that made it 24-3 Delaware Valley. But hey, Marcellus Pack, he's a speedster. Watch this one.
Inside the pack, he's got a nice whole 15-20. Play by 30, look out! 40, 50, packs off to the races, 40, 30, 20, 10, 5, 88 yards! Touchdown, Wesley! Marcellus Pack!
24-10, that's what Marcellus Pack made it with that 88-yard run. But with 13:05 left in the fourth quarter, here's Del Val.
To the right side of the formation, Fontana back, under pressure, he's thrown inside, slant wide open, touchdown, Delaware Valley. Dan Allen's third touchdown reception of the day.
And, you know, trading blows, you have to basically score right away. Here's the problem on the ensuing kickoff.
The 15-yard line, center of field for Pack to the 20, far side 25, turning the corner is Packy is the 30, far side line still, he fumbles the football, and it's loose and picked up by Delaware Valley to the 15, to the 10, 5, touchdown, Aggies, Delaware Valley, Rashik Harvard, and that might have done it for the Wolverines.
That 25-yard fumble recovery for touchdown off the kickoff made it 38-10. The final was 45-10 Delaware Valley, and Wesley really couldn't hold on to the ball, it seemed like, all day, with 6 turnovers forced by Del Val's defense, 4 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, and including that fumble recovery for touchdown we showed you. Tight end Dan Allen with 6 receptions, 128 yards, and 3 touchdowns, including the one we showed, and 1 rushing touchdown as well. Del Val going to North Central. We'll talk about how that developed a little bit more in a second, but your thoughts on the gameplay we saw this weekend?
Well, as a Del Val fan told me, it's time I have to put a little respect on the Aggies' name. So definitely a shout out to them. They just appeared to be just better prepared for this matchup than they were back in week 2 or whenever that 4 overtime game happened. Anthony Fontana looked real comfortable in the pocket, made good decisions. He ran when he had to pick up yards. He passed the ball well. Allen had a big game as a tight end. He created some matchup problems for the Wolverines, and ultimately the ball kind of just got rolling in the Aggies' direction, and they never looked back. So strong performance by them, and it'll be interesting to see how they go up against what seems to be the giant killer in NCC. I mean, you mentioned earlier before when it was 2:39 left in the game, just based on 25 years of experience, I was sitting there watching like, oh yeah, Mount Union's got this. There's plenty of time. They'll come down and score. They'll probably go for 2 and win. But lo and behold, the defense of the Cardinals made some huge plays down the stretch. Mount Union had a chance, but hey, sometimes the favorites fall by the wayside, and that's what we saw in this bracket in both games.
Let's go to the Salisbury bracket to end things here. And we're going to start with me needing oxygen in the first quarter of this game on the sideline for the simple reason we had 6 touchdowns. We'll show a few of them here. First, a minute and a half into the game, Leonard Prue, a 60-yard touchdown pass from Jack Lanham made it 7-0, but the response comes really fast about 2.5 minutes later from Will Bellamy's arm to Andre Ross Jr. for 53 yards and a touchdown to make it 7-7. So at this point, we're thinking this may be a game after all. They trade a couple blows at 14-14, and then it's Michael Fowler with a 29-yard run with 4:17 left in the first quarter. That made it 21-14. Guess what? Finn Duran got a 38-yard touchdown pass from Will Bellamy, another receiver that you don't hear a lot from during the season, and he shows up there as Union's been dinged in the receiving core a little bit, and with injuries, etc., made it 21-21. But here's the problem. Ultimately, There are rushing touchdowns in the second quarter, 2 of them that lead up to this. So it's 35-21 before Shamar Graves' 8-yard touchdown run with 1:34 left in the second quarter. It was 42-21 Salisbury. So things escalated in a hurry. Still, Bellamy and Ross were not going to just die by the wayside before halftime. With 20 seconds left, look at that one-handed grab by Andre Ross Jr. at the goal line. They made it 42-28 at halftime. Coming out in the third quarter, Griffin Beal gets a 22-yard touchdown pass from Will Bellamy. It's really a game now. It's 42-34, and the teams traded back and forth a little bit here until the 10-minute, 2-second mark. Again, there was trading still going on here, but Michael Fowler getting a 30-yard touchdown pass from Jack Lanham. It was like every time the Union thought they were going to get a chance and get a defensive stop, Salisbury responds, making it 49-34 at that point. Let's fast forward into the fourth quarter. 5.5 minutes left. Ryan Mofer's 13-yard touchdown made it 55-41. He would add one more for a hat trick of rushing touchdowns. 62-41 final in favor of Salisbury. 103 points scored in that game. Congratulations to Salisbury on that huge win. Let's also talk about the stats from that game before I skip ahead. 1,051 yards of offense in this one, and Will Bellamy set the school record with 456 passing yards, 5 touchdowns. The Salisbury defense, 3 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, and a forced fumble did change the game a little bit here and there, at least took away any momentum for Union. Brockport just had a bad go of it against Muhlenberg, 42-0. Muhlenberg beats the Golden Eagles. Let's look at a few touchdowns. Let's look at the first 4 touchdowns by Muhlenberg, all in the first half. First, Ryan Curtis catches a 6-yard pass from Michael Nekowski to make it 7-0 to start the game. 3 minutes into it, actually. 8 minutes later, here's Mitch Daniel from Nekowski to make it 14-0, a 17-yard touchdown pass there. Another 17-yard touchdown pass. This time, again, Ryan Curtis from Mike Nekowski with 12:24 left in the first half. It's 21-0. And then Chris Hilburn with a 10-yard touchdown pass from Mike Nekowski. A little theme forming here, 28-0. So 3 different receivers catching touchdowns in the first half to make it 28-0. For Brockport, here's the story of their day. 4th and 3 in the third quarter at the Muhlenberg 40. Jaleh Code tries to rush for those 3 yards, loses 6 yards in the play. Nick Sirico and Dante Leonardo with the tackle of him there. That pretty much spells a miserable day for Brockport, but a tremendous season for them nonetheless. 42-0. Second shutout by Muhlenberg in the playoffs after they did it to MIT the week before. They outgained Brockport with 367-184. And Nekowski with 243 passing yards, 5 touchdowns. Code with 19 rushes, 66 yards. Not the day he was looking for there. JB, those are the games. And that was crunch time for Week 13, the second round of the playoffs. Okay, JB, first off, I didn't give you a chance to talk about the Salisbury bracket and the gameplay we saw Saturday. Why don't you touch on that real quick?
Well, I mean, basically, I was impressed by how Union went sort of toe-to-toe with that high-powered Salisbury offense. Certainly, Salisbury's defense is going to have to buckle things up a little bit if they're going to be taking on a team like Muhlenberg, who with Hanowski had another big game, 5 touchdowns. Muhlenberg really shut down Brockport's rushing offense, which has really been pretty prolific this year. So if they can do the same thing to Salisbury, a lot of pressure is going to fall on Lanham to have to try to find some open receivers down the field. Muhlenberg has had some success in the defensive passing game, creating turnovers. Should be a great Elite Eight matchup between these two top, basically 5 teams, and with a chance to go into the Final Four. So the next show we're going to do is on Wednesday, and it's going to be the Tail of the Tape show that we normally do with all 4 remaining matchups shown in Tail of the Tape. So you'll want to be watching for that. We're not going to go that in-depth into the future games here. We're going to talk briefly, though, about a few things going around the horn one more time. First off, let's talk about the fact that Whitewater is visiting Mary Hardin Baylor. Obviously, this was not a surprise that Mary Hardin Baylor was a clear number 1 seed, and so they will host this game. And
Whitewater might enjoy the fact that they are out of the cold weather for a day because things have been, if they're anything like they are in upstate New York, pretty ugly probably in Wisconsin weather-wise. But no matter what, it's going to be nice and decently warm probably in Belton, Texas for them when they go down. The question, or the interesting issue, I think, becomes the strength of Whitewater defense against the weakness of Mary Hardin Baylor right now, offense, although they had a great offensive game on Saturday. One game does not a trend make. And so we'll see how that lines up. We'll look at the tail of the tape on Wednesday for that matchup coming up. On the bottom side of that, or bottom bracket on that side, I guess is the right way to say it, we have St. John's traveling to Wheaton. And this Wheaton team, we're going to find out what they're made of here officially, I think, in this game because of the idea that St. John's is not a pushover team. They're only on the road because they dropped a game they never should have dropped in the first place. I think we can all agree that that was just a boneheaded debacle for them that maybe they learned from. I don't know. But the point is that Wheaton's going to have its hands full. But we're going to see what happens here. But the thing we keep saying, and other coaches we're talking to say, wow, if North Central can beat Mount Union and Wheaton beat North Central, what kind of team is Wheaton? That's going to be a tough question to answer right there. I'm going to give you the floor now. Let's wrap back around to Delaware Valley at North Central. Would you like to explain why North Central is hosting? I'll give you the floor to go ahead and do that.
No, because I was convinced that the Del Val, which finished in the third spot in the East Region rankings, was probably a third seed, and North Central, which was a 4 in the North. But, at the end of the day, regional rankings aren't the actual seeds. That happens after the fact. And clearly, for some reason, the way it shook out, probably due to geographic and other cost-cutting concerns, Del Val was not seeded as highly as I thought, maybe others thought that they would. So NCC gets the home game, and that's about it.
For those that like criteria stuff, let me break it down. Delaware Valley had a 520 strength of schedule versus 500 for North Central. They both went 1-1 against regionally ranked opponents. The win was against Stevenson for Delaware Valley. The win for North Central was against Wash U, which was the 3-loss team. The losses were obviously against Wheaton, number 1 seed for North Central, and the loss for Del Val was against Wesley in quadruple overtime, a team that they ended up beating in the end. Yeah, so that's an interesting dilemma. I agree with you that I don't agree with the whole thing. Here's my philosophy on it. If Wesley was picked before North Central in Pool C, and we know that Delaware Valley was inextricably linked to Wesley in those East rankings because Union couldn't clear either one of them. So obviously, if you were going to clear one, you were clearing both. So they were right there as like 2 and 2B basically in the East rankings. Then how is North Central ahead of Del Val, even if you just ignore criteria and look at the reality of how things were picked? Because we don't think that North Central went before Wesley. Now, maybe they did. And if that's the case, great. But you know how we could have avoided all this? Guys, you should have put Union at number 3 or number 2. Then that pushes Del Val down to number 4, justifies the road game a little bit better in week 1 of the playoffs, and also allows us to know right off the bat in week 3 of the playoffs that they will be on the road. But you didn't do that, and so we end up with this whole questioning to the point where we're now going to say, release what their seeds are with it. I don't care how ugly certain games will look like, 6 versus 8 or 1 versus 3. We get it. There's a geographic limitation, but we shouldn't have to guess and wait for every Sunday to hear, it's going to be them instead of them, and then have to, hunt down a reasoning for it. If we see the numbers ahead of time, we can't argue it later, can we? It is what it is. That's the problem I have with it. And I got one more problem. Okay. My soapboxes are never ending this week. For every jerk face out there that is going to try to take pot shots at D'Angelo Fulford in that game. Yeah, he had a fumble. Okay, we showed it. and he had the interception with people in his face. Okay, the offensive line kind of let him down on that one at the end of the game. He accounted for 600 and what number of yards? 688 yards total in that game. It was one of the greatest performances by a quarterback, even possibly better than Rutter's in the win that I've ever watched in football. So for anybody that wants to sit there and blame the loss on him, seriously, check in your football credentials at the door and don't turn back, okay?
Beat it, yeah.
I may have had disagreements with D'Angelo over time. It's pretty clear to people that have watched this long enough. And he may think I'm a clown from time to time. I get it. But I'm never going to take away from somebody's football acumen and ability. And he had a day. He had a career. Okay? He had a season, if we want to go in between those two things. He is an awesome quarterback. Don't ever take away from that, folks. Is he the best that Mount Union's ever had, etc.? Who knows? Those things are so tough to compare because the game changes over time. But you know what? His name's up there.
He definitely has all-time records, and I think in passing yards and touchdowns or something. But yeah, like you said, it evolves over time. Yeah, he won two national championships, one title. I mean, so he didn't get all 4 years like some other guys in the past. But yeah, I mean, if he was going to go out, I mean, I'm sure he wanted to go out with a win in Shenandoah, but he couldn't have really done anything more than what he did last Saturday for his team. So good for him. Wish him luck at wherever he ends up, if it's in some kind of pro football or coaching or something. I'm sure he'll stay close to the game. He certainly is one of the best D3 players we've seen in a long time.
Indeed. So good luck to him, and we'll stay tuned to see what's next. I have a feeling he's going to land on his feet somewhere with football being the underscored part of that equation later on. We'll see. And then finally, Salisbury hosting Muhlenberg. Again, not a surprise because they were in this. It was kind of the number one, number two scenario. We knew who the number one was, at least in this bracket, and that was Salisbury. And so that
here's a funny question for you, Frank, because I actually got this from a fan. Was if Muhlenberg wins, do they host? And I was like, honestly, I'm not really sure. I think they should. I mean, they look like the 2 seed. We know that North Central isn't a 2 seed, at least in theory. If they won, or if Del Val wins, they would be the lower seeded team. So yes, for those of you who are Mules fans and who live in and around Allentown, I would think that yes, you guys would host the national semifinals if your team advances. But once again, we'll have to wait until Sunday to find out, because we just don't really know for sure.
Here's one interesting oddball issue. ESPN3 has a certain lighting requirements for that semifinal game, and we've seen some of these things creep up in the Secretary's Cup game at Coast Guard and at Merchant Marine Academy, because their ability to light those areas is not easy because of the way those stadiums are not built, I guess is maybe the better way to say it. So Muhlenberg would suffer from a similar issue, I think, ultimately, but be probably okay to host that. North Central, a bit more state-of-the-art overall, and some people would claim that there would be the better atmosphere for it, but that's not how it works. I agree with you. Muhlenberg would host it, but you will hear people start to, complain probably about Muhlenberg's facilities compared to North Central's. Again, not how we determine it, or it's not supposed to be how we determine those things. Muhlenberg was essentially a 2 seed. We're pretty clear in the top part. They could have been a 1, technically. I would say Salisbury, and they were very, very close to the top of their respective, part of the bracket. On the bottom part, it's number 4 in the North, North Central. They are treated like they're number 3 in the North, kind of. It seems like, and Del Val. Obviously, Muhlenberg would host ahead of Del Val, and then the question is North Central ultimately. So Muhlenberg win, and you'll probably host in a nice cold Pennsylvania at that point, if I had to guess. JB, we want to run some highlights here of the press conferences of Union and Salisbury. First up, here's Union's highlights.
And his staff and his program, they are a terrific program, terrific team. Congratulate them and their players on advancing to the next round. They certainly played well today. So, but on the flip side, very proud of our guys. From where we were when we got here 4 years ago. George being a guy that was on an 0-10 team, moving forward this season. I like where we're at. I like where we're headed. I love our guys, and I think that proved today that there's no quit in them.
I have a reminder just to make sure you guys talk to the mic whenever you guys are answering questions. I'll open up to the media for any questions.
Coach, obviously you've got a strong group of returners. Obviously, Will and Ike and several others. What does that impact of having them coming back next year mean for you?
Well, I think they're going to be a year older. Will will be a senior, Andre will be a junior, and Ike will be a junior, and we're only graduating a couple guys on offense. Griffin Beal will graduate, Turner Genti, and a couple other guys. But it's always nice to be able to build off where we're at right now. And on the flip side, same thing on the defense. We're losing quite a few seniors that are impact players for us, but I really like where our guys are in behind them and moving forward.
This is a question for Will. You set a record today for passing yards for Union. Was there something you guys saw in film that you could see that you could exploit in the Salisbury defense?
Yeah, after analyzing the film, we figured out that their front seven were very stout. They're big, strong, fast kids, and we came in and we said we're gonna have to throw the ball to win. And we scored 41 points, weren't able to put it all together and come out with a W, but I'm very proud of my offense.
Andre, you had a heck of a game throughout, especially first half. Second half, it seemed like you're going through some cold weather cramping. How are you feeling, and what was the result of all that happening in the second half to you?
I feel like it was very detrimental. I wanted to finish the game with my guys. We started the season great, finished the season great. I feel bad that I wasn't able to finish, but I did all I can do. Just got to take care of my body more.
George went up against that option offense. What did you see? Was it weird seeing the different motion and different ways Salisbury runs the ball? Did the Springfield game help out in terms of preparation for the Salisbury offense?
Yeah, absolutely. We came into this game running the same defense that we started the game against Springfield with, and we knew it was possible we would get out of that and get into some different fronts and some different looks and things of that nature. And we actually ended up doing that in the third quarter, and it proved to be pretty successful. We were able to get some stops on the defensive end, and when you game plan against a team like that, you look at them. You got big, tall, strong, physical players up front, and they fire off the ball, and they have athletes back there. I guess I could shout out number one, the fullback. I thought when we looked at the tape, we didn't think he was that good. He played a heck of a game, and he was tough to bring down. So I thought he played an amazing game, and honestly, it was even though they put up 60 on us, it was still a hell of a lot of fun playing football, especially like Coach always says, it's a great day to be in Dutch.
Looks like you had to steal a shoe to try to stop him today. I saw them toss the
Yeah. Well, I don't know why he couldn't tie him up. I guess he had a little bit of goal.
Came off the second time.
Yeah, came off a couple times. Yeah, Denard Robinson thing going.
Coach, congratulations on your, I believe, third perfect season, regular season, and of course the victory last week. If you had something that you could have done differently today, is there anything in the last 15 minutes since the game ended that you wish you could have had?
I think you're always going to wish calling the plays. There was a couple, calls I would have liked to have had back, for sure. Put Will and Andre in better positions to make the plays. That's something I'll analyze in the off season as we move forward and try to learn from it. Like I tell those guys, you win some, you learn some, and we got to learn from this, and we have to improve as we move forward. That's what it's all about. It's moving forward, not moving back.
Thank you, and again, congratulations.
Thank
guys.
you.
Is there anything you can build on this season? It's your fourth season at Union. You guys have gotten better each year. What are you doing to build on this season?
It'll come back to senior leadership as always. I thought we had great senior leadership this year with George being a captain, Evan Gillen and Griffin Beal, and we'll look to our seniors moving forward. And it's college football, so it comes down to recruiting as well. We got to blend in some new faces, some new bodies, bring them in here to play with Andre and Will and the other guys. I looked out there. We had two freshmen starting on the D line today. We had a freshman starting at receiver. we had a freshman starting at right tackle. So I like that moving forward as we go out and recruit now.
Will, it seemed like the team after the game wasn't what I would call upset. I mean, obviously there was a little bit of a fracas that developed after the game, but after that point, the team seemed overall spirited. Union did. Was this kind of a fun game, and even despite the result, was this something you're going to be able to build on? And Andre as well coming back. George obviously is graduating, but you guys coming back. How do you kind of look back at this game? I know you're only a few minutes outside of it right now, but how do you look back at this now?
I think we, like Coach said, we can for sure build off of it. Kind of been a run-heavy offense all season long and relied on the legs of IK Earboy. And I think, our athletes on the outside, my receivers got to showcase their abilities today. I'm going to miss Griffin Beal, number 13. Kid's a hell of a player, hell of a leader. Had a blast playing with him. But like Coach said, we had a freshman that came in the game and stepped up. Andre will be back. And, going into next season, I think we proved today that we're here to throw the football too.
Okay, and up next, Salisbury's. We do ask Jack Lanham about what developed there. Not much of an answer. You'll see what I mean by that. It kind of was a brush-off answer. Didn't want to talk about it. Fine. We're not talking about it any further. Just wanted to kind of key in here to tell you what that question was.
We won. That's the bottom line. We're pleased to be advancing. No doubt about it. Obviously, it was a hard-fought game. I thought give Union some credit for executing very well, especially from the offensive side of things. But at the same time, we did what we needed to do offensively as well. And our defense did enough to stop them in very important situations. So it was a team effort. We did some good things on special teams. Did a good job as far as coverage. We had a couple of nice punt returns as well that put us in a position to do some other things. So, it's playoff football. And, the more you advance, you're going to face good teams, and good teams are going to face us. So that's basically what happened today. Overall, it was a dog fight, but at the end, we prevailed.
All right, open it up to any questions. Just make sure you guys talk to the mic whenever you guys answer questions.
Coach, if I told you were going to give up 41 points today and win the game, what would you have told me? And what does it make you feel about your defense as you start advancing on right now? I know last week you gave up 0, but obviously there's an escalation of competition here. How do you feel about the defense's performance today overall?
I'm a little surprised. Honestly, we didn't anticipate that. We knew they executed well as far as their timing routes. We definitely, I mentioned to the team last night, I thought 13 was their MVP. He was a pretty good guy. I thought we needed to be a little more physical on the other receiver, on Andre, and we didn't do that. Even the opportunities that we had a chance to jam him, we did not do that. And but we made them work, because they was going down a lot, and they physically, after they caught the ball, they felt it, and I think that paid off down the road, especially in the fourth quarter. So. Hey, hats off to them. They have 2 6'3" wide receivers. I will use them to perfection. I thought they, defensively, we didn't get set up fast enough. I thought, and we just weren't honestly used to that fast-paced execution, and the timing routes was pretty good. No, I would, I thought they'd put some points on the board, but I didn't imagine 41 points.
Sean, I got one for you, bud. Earlier in the beginning of the game, looked like it was a little shaky from the start, trying to be able to cover Andre, but the second half you kind of turned it on, able to get those 2 picks. What changed during halftime for you? Like, what did you tell yourself in order to, play a little bit better?
Well, as a team, we were able to just come together and just calm our nerves. Mm-hmm. And we were able to pick apart what they were doing, and we made a switch. I went back to safety, and the guys that stepped in, Troy Garrett, he came in, he played great. And then back at safety, it just felt good being back there and just being able to read the coverage more. And the guys up front really they put more pressure on the quarterback in the second half, which just forced him to air it out and then just overthrow a couple balls.
Jack, first half, it seemed like it was a passing fest going on, at least for the touchdowns. Then you guys seemed to revert into the run. For you, what do you think was the most important aspect of your offense today? The pass game, the rush game, and why?
I think it was everything, because the rush game sets up the passes, and
when we start throwing the ball, they have to respect that and play back, and that opens it up to run the ball. So, I mean, basically our philosophy is we're just going to take what they give us. I think early in the first, overthrew 2 passes that were pretty open, and so we made a mental note of that. We were going to come back to that. But honestly, I give the coaches the credit. They put us in a great position to be successful, and the guys around me executed well. So.
Okay, follow up. At the end of the game, you were seen waving to the bench. Some things happened afterward. Would you like to give kind of your assessment of what happened there and say anything to Union on the positive side you might not have been able to after the game?
I mean, they're a tough team, and I was just really excited that we won. Really, I'm just looking forward to this week, and I think it'll probably be Muhlenberg.
It is.
But it is. It is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Unions, they were a tough team, and I give them a lot of credit.
Thanks.
Easier question, Jack. You got things started with Prue at the beginning of the game. You were like escapability factor through the roof. You just seemed to have that extra sense somebody was around you today. Were you just in the zone in the passing department?
Well, we knew we could throw the ball over top today. It just required us to get back there and have time to throw it because they played at the box a lot. So we knew on the first drive we could throw one over their heads.
Third play, yeah.
Yeah, it just when they're blitzing people, you just gotta. I know the receiver's gonna be open. I just gotta find time to throw it to them.
Proving a nice catch and run. Mike Ryan Mofor, you must like the playoffs very much. Last week, over 100 yards, touchdowns, nobody tackling you. Today, touchdowns over 100 yards, your shoes falling off. You didn't want to go down. You're liking these extra games after the regular season, aren't you?
Yeah, because I guess we're more in rhythm right now. Mm-hmm. So you have extra games, extra practices, so we just more repetition. So right now it's just basically just doing what we're doing at practice in the game.
On that last touchdown, you really, really wanted that one.
Oh, yeah.
You just were a beast on that drive.
Yeah, because I had to do it. I called it, so I had to do it.
You backed up. You backed it up. Congratulations, Mike Ryan.
Okay, appreciate everyone there, Coach Wood and Cyril Parham and everybody out there. Appreciate it. Dustin Johnson was the site rep. Appreciate him at William Patterson. He came in there, kind of spent his Thanksgiving weekend being a site rep for a little while, and he's appreciated. So, and Coach Bierman, who actually messaged me cleaning out the locker room on Saturday night at midnight. He found my tripod case from Ithaca that I lost. Apparently they had accidentally picked it up. He took a picture of it. He's like, I think I found your tripod case. So if you think that these coaches don't get down to brass tacks in their own programs, the fact that he knew to even suggest that was mine and found it himself is just hilarious to me. Thanks to him for that. And thanks to the Union fans who were just a lot of fun to be around during pregame and postgame on Saturday. That's going to be an interesting program next year, to say the least. They do lose some great players graduating off, but they've got a lot of guys coming back, and that the core of their offense is probably the crux of what's coming back there. We'll see how 2020 goes for them. Final thoughts for this episode, sir?
Yeah, just we'll see if we get any defense in the next round, because there was only a couple of games that had it. So we're down to the last four games of the season, basically, right? So it's getting down to the final, the Elite Eight, as it were, and should be a great weekend of football. We'll look forward to see who ends up in the national semifinals after this weekend.
Okay, my earpiece just fell for the 18th time today, so I think that means that it's time for us to end this thing. Yeah, you're better off. Just don't listen to me. You're fine. Anyway, we'll see you on Wednesday, including a Coach Nate Milne interview that we'll have, among other things. We have some player interviews, too, we hope, for Wednesday's show. So stay tuned for our tail of the tape comparisons for the quarterfinals coming up in just a few days. The show's on Wednesday, though. Thanks, folks.